right at page 250, right after I stopped recording for the day, while the video for today is still loading. Things got real rough. I hope this recovers, because this has been about 5 very bad pages. I hope this did get revised between eARC and final printing. Remember when I reviewed 5 Broken Blades and I said that the first half was rough and it could have used one more editing pass and some fleshing out of the first half? I'm having exactly the opposite problem with of Jade and Dragons. The first half was really solid. The second half, I'm not sold. Here's the thing. Around page 250, for the first time, Ying suggests that she thinks her parents were cowards because they died. This has never been suggested before, and I'm now on page 318 and it hasn't been suggested again. I hope that got taken out in final edits. Second, page 318, the chimeras are called grotesque. Now, I thought they sounded pretty grotesque, but before now they've been referred to as doing something meaningful, or being just incredible works of engineering, which they undoubtedly are incredible works of engineering. I don't know about meaningful, but still, that stuck out to me at the time because, saying that it was meaningful, stuck out to me at the time because I found them kind of grotesque. And now suddenly, past page 300 of a 400-some page book, now they're grotesque. One of the things I do when I'm rating a book is I say, is it better or worse or the same quality as this book that I've rated on the higher end of what I'm thinking of? And this book, it's on the lower end of what I'm rating, of the rating that I'm thinking of. Here's where I'm at with Of Jade and Dragons right now. Based purely on the eARC, and I have to emphasize that because I think the problems are fixable. I think you could take care of it between the time that you release the eARC and the time that it goes to print. But based purely on the eARC, I cannot give this 4 stars. Even if it absolutely nails the landing, even if it sticks the landing, 10 out of 10 ending, I can't give it 4 stars. Because I gave The Last Blood Carver 4 stars. I had problems with the transitions in The Last Blood Carver. But The Last Blood Carver recovered. And at this point, the problems that I have with this book can't be recovered. They can just be avoided for the rest of the book. That's really disappointing. We have a lot to talk about. Okay, this video isn't going to have a spoiler-free section. I will link my Goodreads review in the description. There is a spoiler-free review there. The really short spoiler-free review, if you want it, from this video before I get into spoiler territory is I'm really disappointed in this book. Okay, if you don't want spoilers, bye. Check out the Goodreads review. That has my overall thoughts without the spoilers in it. Bye. Okay, spoiler time. Granted, I say spoilers, but this is entirely based on an eARC. I was very happy to get an eARC. I read the book. I now really hope that there was some more editing done, specifically to the second half of the book, after the eARCs went out. This review is actually one of the harder ones for me to do, because I really wanted to like this book, and I did like this book. I liked this book so much for the first half of it. I thought it was going to be an easy 4 stars. I thought it was going to be debating between like the just below 4 stars to like 4.5 stars. And then the second half happened. TV Tropes has a trope called the big lipped alligator moment. The big lipped alligator moment is a big overdramatic set piece scene that comes out of nowhere and is never referenced again for the entire rest of the movie. Around what is page 250 in the e-arc, there is what I consider to be the book big lipped alligator moment. It's an assassination attempt. And I just said that part of being a big lipped alligator moment is it never comes up again. Yeah. The scene isn't done well in the e-arc. It's not done well. The entire pacing of it, the descriptions, how it ends and how it starts and how it connects to the stuff around it just isn't done well. None of that stuff is done well. I don't feel the urgency that I should from an assassination attempt because the details are in the wrong places and on the wrong things. I didn't like it. And the next scene has Ying, like, begging to be allowed to see Ye Young and saying that it's her fault he got hurt. And I'm like, how? I'm not connecting the train of thought. You did a very clever thing. He shielded you from the consequences in a way that didn't seem legit even when it happened, but now you're on your knees, kowtowing, prostrating yourself, begging for forgiveness, and I just don't buy it anymore. And that's the problem. Once that started, once that first scene happened, problems sort of built, like the world's worst snowball. It wasn't well done. The scenes stopped being as well crafted. There were a lot of cracks in them. There were pacing issues. There were transition issues between the scenes. There were images or moments that just kind of made me roll my eyes or raise an eyebrow and completely took me out of the book. The first half was like riding down a well-paved road. The second half was like that road was now old and cracked and half flooded by swampy water. I said a few times, I even made a short to say, this book felt a lot like a new Tamara Pierce, a 2024 Chinese own voices Alana story. This is not the nostalgia talking. Those are the best parts when it felt like a Tamara Pierce story. I'm just going to rip the whole Band-Aid off. There were 2 points where I knew the book had lost me. One of them was the big reveal, which this is the real spoiler, so cover your ears for about 10 seconds. It's the point where she finds out that the letter her brother had that was warning him not to investigate their father's death was written by the man she's in love with. You're good to open your ears. I didn't buy it like I should. I have to buy that. You give me a big reveal, I have to believe it. And it didn't have the impact it needed. And not necessarily because of how that scene was written either. It didn't have the impact it needed to have because of everything that came before it. Because by this point, enough snowballs had gotten lumped into that snowball of everything feeling off and unpolished and rough that what should have been a big emotionally impactful scene fell flat for me. And the other moment that I knew the book had lost me was when the main character says in her internal monologue that she's been looking at the faraway empire for her father's killer, and my response was immediately, wait, you've been looking for your father's killer? Because she hasn't been on page. I straight forgot this was a murder mystery at points because the focus was so much on the Engineers Guild trials. The second half was very poorly done. The love interest had weird why I love interest tendencies that just raise red flags for me. I got so tired of men picking her up without her express consent and just carrying her around, because that happened with two men. There's supposed to be some kind of love triangle. I mean, she doesn't have feelings for one of them, but I think she made the right call with the other one by walking away from him, so I don't care. And the story is self-contained, but in a way where I don't think it needs another book. So the other big problem I had, other than like scenes transitioning, having weird moments and images, whatever, that kind of took me out of the story. The other big problem, it's Ying. I know she's a teenage girl. I know teenage girls are emotional and somewhat irrational a lot of the time. So are teenage boys. So are people in general. We're not going down that road. Just, she's about 16 years old. Maybe 17. Not sure. But she's 16 or 17. She's going to be emotional. She's going to be irrational. But the level of vitriol directed at certain characters who did not cause what she's accused them of was really weird and uncomfortable. And then I'm just going to touch really briefly on the Final Engineers Guild trial. Ying makes a cannonball that has a bit of basically radioactive mercury. And this was an image that this little scene had so many plot holes, in my opinion. It had so many problems. So, she's made a little cavity in the cannonball into which she pours this radioactive mercury stuff. And the sentence starts with shaky hands. And I was like, what? You're handling that with shaky hands? Why do we not have a thing about she took a deep breath, flexed and extended her fingers until they stopped shaking? Why are you handling something that we have seen, like, eat a guy's hand away with shaky hands? And then there was no mention of the hole in the cannonball being plugged up. So the idea of the cannonball is radioactive mercury in the cannonball. You fire the cannonball, it hits something, and it has to embed itself because it has to stick long enough for radioactive mercury to dissolve the cannonball and then dissolve the thing it's stuck to. But I don't know how it sticks, because it's not like it's magnetic, and it's not like you're only throwing it at metal. So, first of all, why are you handling it with shaky hands? Second of all, there's no plug, so how is it not getting into the cannon? Third of all, how is the cannonball sticking? And fourth of all, how is this even useful if it's got so much, like, how is it useful if it has such a delay? There's a comment, like, if that was a group of soldiers, it would have been a pile of flesh and bones. Like, these aren't big, and you have a tiny cavity of radioactive mercury. Yeah, I get it. It's horrible, and it eats away at everything, but it's not like you dropped a fucking plague bomb. Like, isn't it still going to be restricted to the people, to whoever happened to be holding the cannonball? If they just, like, throw it aside, aren't they going to be fine? I'm also unclear why she was allowed to have the radioactive mercury, because, like, the guildmaster just gives it to her. And not, like, hands it to her either. Like, puts it on her workbench anonymously. I'm like, why? Why is she allowed to have it? Why are you just putting it there? Why aren't you delivering it by hand? Why is she allowed to use it around other people? I'm sure that this stuff, they call it devil's ore, is the colloquial name in the book. I'm sure this stuff will be important down the line. It was only used for set pieces in this that had no real meaning. They were just kind of elaborate shows, I guess. That stuff didn't work for me. That ending didn't work for me. I wasn't sold as her being clever. She also makes the flying guillotine, the hat thing that blades go in, blades go out. That felt like it was just shoehorned in because she was intending to use this against a trained assassin? How was that ever going to work? Okay, that's not her eventual target, but when she started making it, the person she wanted to fight was a trained assassin. How are you going to get a flying guillotine off on them? How are you going to manage that? So, outside of the first two inventions we see, her glider and her fan, I was not sold on her cleverness and engineering prowess by anything, really. And I wasn't sold by her by the end of the book. I think the best thing she did was abandoning the plot and going home. It's billed as the first in a series, so apparently the publisher disagrees with me. So at the end of the day, what do we have? We have a mystery whose big reveal fell flat for me. We have a love story that ended, and I think it was right to end. We have a love triangle that's going to go nowhere because she only has feelings for one of the two, and he's just not a good partner, I don't think. And we've got an upcoming war story, I suppose, that I don't see how Ying would be involved in because she just went home at the end of the book. And I think she was right to just go home at the end of the book. So unless we're changing POV characters completely, if we're going to Yu Yang, I'm not sure I want to read an entire story from his point of view. But if we're going to like Nian or Yakan would be a good POV character. Mr. Third Wheel. I'm disappointed. I know I said this would be spoilery, but I don't actually want to go through the entire everything. I'm not very good at doing spoilery. The big reveal in the mystery was unsatisfying to me. The love story weirded me out and I didn't like it. The entire story of the Engineers Guild trials ends with a whimper because she quits and goes home. Like, what's left? What is there still to draw readers back? I don't know. The natural progression of this would be to focus on the war that's about to start. That the X ? Love interest is kind of leading. But we just went through a whole lot of stuff for our main character to decide that she wants to be a pacifist and not, create weapons, which there's a whole lot to unpack about how I feel like that arc was handled. We're just gonna set it aside so that we're not here all day. So why would we then follow her back into a war story? And if she's not the POV character, who is? I think the best option is Yakan, the youngest prince. I feel like I'm talking myself around and around in circles. Here's the deal. Here's the end result. I gave this book 3 stars. I put a big old shiny asterisk, big star goes right next to it, neon light saying, look down below. This is fixable. Everything in the book that I had a problem with is fixable. Some of them aren't going to be changed because they're YA tropes, and I can hate them all I want, but the readership apparently disagrees with me, and the publishers certainly do. But all the things that I have problems with, I believe are fixable, and could have been fixed between releasing the e-arc and final printing. And I just have to hope that they are fixed, because this writing and this author and this world and these characters deserve to have it fixed. They deserve to have that book be a 4.5 star book, which it should have been. If the editing and if the quality of the second half matched the quality of the first half, it would have been a 4 star or better. And I think that it's fixable because for the most part, take out the assassination scene. I cannot believe it's even there because we stopped talking about it 2 scenes later and it never comes up again. Take that out, polish up the transitions and the scenes afterwards, And I think you've got a 4-star book. So it's the way that I read it. The book that I read is a 3-star book. It could have been a 4-star book. I hope it's now a 4-star book. But if you're going to read it, I have to warn you that what I read, the second half, is not a 4-star book. It's not a 4-star ending. And I'm really sad to say that. I'm really disappointed because I was so happy and enjoying this book so much. That's all from me. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel. One of these options is going to be a video and one's going to be a subscribe button. You should hit one of them, maybe both. And I'll see you next time. Bye.